You're tuned in to Reimagine 2021, version 11, the #1 virtual crypto and blockchain conference. In this section, our experts take a deep dive into the metaverse and look at real-world cases.
What are your thoughts on Metaverse? Facebook's been working on it. Is Zoom Metaverse, gaming, NFTs are in gaming, that kind of Metaverse. Yep. What's your thoughts on Metaverse? Because that's kind of been, in discussions a lot. But where are we at? What's the status, and is NFTs kind of helping that?
Yeah, the digital realm used to be what we called the web, which then became smartphone apps. And it was really just an extension of the user experience or user interface to basically make it work on a small screen that you always took around with you. Now, because of this kind of convergence of what's coming with VR, AR, which are going to become so easy to use that they're just going to look like regular glasses, or even like bifocals. Lightweight, super easy to wear, contact lenses, and so that user experience combined with crypto says I can have assets in that digital realm that I own, that aren't owned and managed by Facebook or Apple or Google or any of my technology overlords, that I own myself, that transcend time and space, that I can move around. And our lives are going to be completely integrated, especially with AR, as we walk around and see the weather and be able to use things in the digital realm, like, my ticket that I bought that I'm just going to present by blinking or something, with my AR glasses, is a non-fungible token, just like a concert ticket is a non-fungible token. There's a metaverse that is that kind of Ready Player One, completely virtual realm, right? Yep. And then there's a metaverse which is completely integrated into the physical world. And then there's variations on the two. And so it's not just one metaverse, it's like parallel metaverses which will intersect, because I can take my digital objects in the NFT sense and move them somewhere else.
You'll be immersed into
absolutely
physical worlds.
And you're going to see property auctions, you're going to see the equivalent of real estate auctions, and I promise you that the Sotheby's and the Compasses of the world are going to be managing real estate sales for digital properties no different than they manage. Now, it might not just be them, it might be new companies set up just to deal with digital real estate, but that's coming.
I think it'll really depend on the community. I think these are community-first primitives, and if you go to one community like CryptoPunks, they're going to have a certain set of ideologies around why they're cool. If you go to NBA Top Shots, they'll have a different ideology around why it's cool. And I think that, you go to I forget Loot or something, and you look at that, and people are thinking about collecting items for gaming and for future games, and that's also super different. And it'll really depend on these communities and what they're kind of striving for, I think.
Yeah. And is that good that NBA and Nike and some of these other larger enterprises are engaging with NFTs?
I think that it's good. I think it's going to happen eventually anyway, so we might as well start the experimentation now. I think there's kind of a meta question that people will need to start asking themselves. How do I think about ownership? How do I think about my role in a community in terms of the things I've acquired relative to other people in the community that are interesting to me, that will kind of come up eventually, I feel like. But at the moment, it's an experimentation time, and I think it's awesome. And I think we're probably going to see more of it based on those previous examples.
Just recently, Adobe announced that they're going to be integrating NFT provenance into Photoshop itself and across their suite. And that's spectacular. I don't think it's got anywhere near enough play, because it represents sort of the integration of some of these techniques and concepts into the primary creative tools that are being used, and therefore will just serve to further democratize access to it. And so I think it's a really brilliant move on behalf of Adobe to do so, and I think it's going to further drive adoption of these technologies.
And we've talked a lot about the technology. Your team, Blockcnative, is actually involved in this NFT stuff in terms of the data and the analytics and the infrastructure. So maybe we can give some insight into how your team's involved in that kind of sector.
Sure. So we specialize in understanding Blockcnative specializes in understanding in-flight transactions and how, in particular, how a network congestion affects things like gas prices. Well, today, particularly on Ethereum, when NFT launches happen, gas prices go through the roof. And we watch and track this in real time so that folks who are trying to conduct transactions can understand what's going on. Recently, Ethereum went through a major upgrade called the London hard fork. It included a change called EIP 1559 that changed the way that transaction fees are calculated. And there's a thing called the base fee, which is determined by the network, and there's what's called the priority fee or minor tip, which is determined by the user. And what we're observing, and we haven't really even publicized very much yet, is that under major event scenarios, like a big NFT launch, these two sides, the priority fee and the base fee, interact in unexpected ways. And effectively what happens is a tabletop appears to get on chain. At the beginning, the base fee is low, and so all of that tabletop is determined by the priority fee or the minor tip. This is user generated. It's like psychology, right? And the base fee is algorithms. And what happens, interestingly, is the priority fee, the psychology, and the base fee or algorithm interact with each other, and they create conditions which sort of holistically emerge from the network. That during these periods of high network congestion, look, the price to get on chain is going to be 2,000 Gwei. Right? It's expensive. But how you get there is determined on where in that curve you are. And so it's pretty fascinating to observe these sort of emergent behaviors and to start to shine some light into, hey, here's how all these various things combined into marketplace reality and forces. And then what we get to do at Blockcnative is help people transact with confidence when that's happening.
And what's the benefit to that? Because I know you're working with certain dApps and teams. What do they do with this? What are some of the things that they're doing with this insight?
So being able to look into in-flight transactions enables you to improve user experience. So users have more information, they can make better decisions, they can transact with confidence. For protocols, they can understand how their protocols being used in the wild for protocol monitoring and ultimately protocol protection. Traders use our infrastructure to decision on trading opportunities to drive profitability. And anyone in the ecosystem can use our gas estimation services to basically price transactions correctly so that they'll have the performance that you expect without overpaying. And so it's pretty fun for us at Blockcnative to be building sort of foundational infrastructure for the entire ecosystem.
Fantastic.
I mean, people are willing to pay real money for virtual items in games.
Yeah.
I'm not a gamer, so I can't. To me, that doesn't make sense to me. But I absolutely recognize that exists, and so I guess that means you should take my opinion with a grain of salt, because there's already something that doesn't jibe with my worldview. So
yeah.
Loot's a great example. As of an NFT that's kind of becoming gaming, as a product person, I love to see minimum viable products, right? Something that just starts very, very simple. When Loot came out, I was kind of like, what is this list? This ordered list or whatever. And then I started realizing, oh my gosh, this is just a list of actual, items that could be in a game. You can imagine your imagination starts to run. Like, what does this item look like? What color is it? How can it use it? And so they basically, created an MVP of a product through an NFT. So they got essentially, bootstrapped both the actual event, the dollars of the game. So bootstrapped the development, the cost of the game. They created a user base, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They got users to buy into that community, which is phenomenal. And they already have a whole bunch of characters and items that they can actually use to build out the game.
Yeah.
So as a product person, you just basically wrote a spec and farmed it out to your community. And now all the developers just get to go and create cool things, and the artists get to bring those things to life, which is pretty awesome. I think that'll go down in history as one of the coolest projects, I think.
No, you're right. It's very, and it's different, right? The profile for in general, you would think crypto is like anti-establishment, anti-government, self-sovereign. And then you have these NFTs where it's just like completely community-driven, very inclusive and networking in a way, right? So that's kind of interesting. And going back to the art side, do you see collectibles like CryptoPunks and these Bored Apes as being like a store of value? We've talked about Bitcoin, right, as a store of value. Do you see these NFTs as a potential store of value, like diversification of your allocation?
Potentially. It's, I mean, when I was growing up, I owned like sports cards, like baseball cards, football cards, and like, you put them in plastic. You always, the Topps cards you open up. I think Topps even came out with an NFT platform. I never really considered them as like assets, more collectibles, Some people collect things just for the fun of collecting them. Some are really serious about it, where they collect them and they trade them and stuff. I think the baseball card industry wasn't exactly very liquid until, the internet kind of came out, and now you could buy, sell on eBay or whatever. So I think there's a paradigm shift where some of these NFTs actually could form as stores of value, similar to how the more traditional art world, when you buy a piece of art, that is a store of value. It has, you store it somewhere. You can, the artist can actually create prints of it. So there's originals and there's prints, and there's a whole market behind it. So the market dynamics will probably change a lot.
Bitcoin's a store of value. Do you see some of these arts as a store of value? Another way to diversify a little bit?
Yeah. Art is a store of value, and what I like to ask people is, how many pieces of art do you have in your home that are worth over $100,000? And I've, only once ever had anyone say yes. But most people understand the value of having art at that level. And then people that do have art at that level are often like, well, why would I spend money on an NFT? Well, most of the people that have a $10 million piece of art actually have a replica in their home. They just keep the original downstairs somewhere. So they understand the value, but they know they can't sell the replica for money. Well, the same thing applies to NFTs. Well, there could be an image copied of every NFT, but the value is in its like provable scarcity. And I think that's the piece that about NFTs that's often misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it allows people some accessibility, inclusivity as well in the fractional, and if you can't get into it, at least you own a little bit, and it kind of reflects there.
Yeah. So art in itself before was just owned by one owner, typically. There's products now that are Web 2 products that actually let you buy a share of art that's not actually done on the blockchain, and fractionalized ownership on blockchain products and NFT products, I think is going to be another big market. And especially when we get into these next worlds that we're living in digitally in the metaverse, right?
I definitely see like a lot of that disruption happening, people talking about it in like the creative industry, right? Like, and it could be music, it could be just artwork. So that's an area that I'm not following too closely, but for me personally, the excitement is around the metaverse. And that ties into this aspect that I was just discussing a little while ago, is when you're in the metaverse, you'll be in a digital world and you'll need digital goods. And that's gonna be an area of NFTs that we can't even imagine what it could be like in the next 3 to 5 years. And we're seeing so much capital and kind of talk happening around the metaverse with the Facebook news, with Microsoft not getting into it. And there's like sort of like this debate about should it be a decentralized metaverse versus a centralized metaverse. And NFTs will definitely play a big role in that, right? So it's a fully digital world and digital experience. You'll need to have digital goods and digital items in that world. And so there will definitely be a big use case there. For our scenario, from where I see it personally, I imagine a world where if you have an NFT, not necessarily just in the metaverse, but even if you are part of a product ecosystem, like a decentralized finance product, like our exchange, for example, we're looking at use cases for NFTs to give you certain membership rights. So if you reach certain milestones, you'll unlock an NFT, and that NFT could then give you certain privileges. It could give you trading discounts. It could give you access to certain groups where there's only people that have that privilege can come and interact with us or communicate with each other. You could get early product access. And there's just so many use cases and utilities that we're thinking about around NFTs that go beyond the art aspect of it.
With NFTs, what do you think is the next industry that will get disrupted?
In my opinion, I'd say the metaverse is definitely the area of disruption here. It's just so much, I guess that's like, there's so much excitement, so much unknowns that come from that, right? Like that's a whole new world, a whole new kind of dimension that we have not yet explored or experienced. And the way that I think about it is, it's sort of like having a flip phone, and now you're suddenly going to have an Apple app store come out, and imagine all the possibilities that brings along with it. So we've seen some of that with some presentations. The presentation that Facebook did, it was, in my opinion, brilliant, but it was still sort of like the early use cases, and I feel like it'll just be, the metaverse will probably be a lot bigger and a lot more awesome than even that presentation itself. But it'll take time, right? The one thing that we have to realize is these technologies, while they may be exciting, it takes years to build. And so, I wouldn't be expecting something to come out, let's say, in the next year. But if you look at it in the 3 to 5 year time frame, then it's hard to even predict what it would be like. So for example, in 2020, early on, before the DeFi rise, we were expecting, and there was a lot of talk in the community about options trading to be the next big hype area. And there was a lot of chatter around that. But then we saw in summer of 2020, DeFi just exploding, and all of the attention went to that, right? And while people were still learning about DeFi and catching up on it, the next innovation was NFTs. And now we're getting into GameFi. And so overall, the way that this industry, especially the crypto industry, is growing is it just like at phenomenal speeds. I think it's unparalleled in any other industry. And yet it still takes many years for those technologies and infrastructure to mature. So, I'm super excited about what the next 3 to 5 years is going to bring. And we'll probably be seeing use cases and products coming out that we can't even imagine today.
What do you see the future infrastructure being built on for NFTs?
Great. So it's hard to say there's going to be one winner. That is in many ways optimal, right? One internet is better than two internets, which is kind of the way we're going, to a Chinese internet and an American internet. Don't really like that part. And the wars over 5G and AI. So one platform for NFTs would probably be better. And some would say, well, that's got to be Ethereum. But Solana has equally established itself as a platform for NFTs. So I don't think we have to say there has to be one platform. And I think it's possible we'll have other layer ones where digital property rights can be established. And ultimately, you'll probably see an expansion of platforms and then maybe a consolidation. And does it go all the way down to a single monopoly or a duopoly or an oligopoly? I don't really know. But right now, I want to invest in all of them. I want to own little pieces of all of them and then see how that develops over time.
And which business models do you see in traditional media dying out because of NFTs?
I don't think that some like media is going to die, actually. NFTs is different. It's not like killing someone, it's create like a new market. Yeah, it's different from just media. It's more about ownership. So like NFT itself, it represents ownership for something, and it's kind of, yeah, it's just new market and new like possibilities, not like something gonna die. Everything will be in place, same.
When we're talking about NFTs, can you talk a little bit about kind of, do you see in the future, do you see NFTs only being owned by humans, or do you think AI and robots will also start to use NFTs in that way?
Well, sure, they can use NFTs. So, and anyway, our world is like continuously converting into digital world, and all this like robots, algorithms, neural networks, they will be there, and they will use all these digital objects for sure. So yeah, definitely all these instances they can use NFTs.
Where do you see a lot of the disruption happening with NFTs? In what industry?
Everything. Like honestly, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, have the potential to massively disrupt any intellectual property based system, right? So you're thinking about patents, you're thinking about copyrights, you're thinking about trademarks. all of those things that are protected right now by a legal framework and require armies of attorneys with all of their billable hours to pay for to be able to exchange, buy and sell and license them, that all can be replaced handedly with NFTs. Now, inside the NFT universe, there is a movement off of proof of work chains and onto proof of stake chains because, not to repeat a little bit of a misnomer, but there is a significant amount of power that is generated and used to secure proof of work blockchains, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others. That's not necessarily bad because they're using that electricity to create economic value. But when you're thinking about the subset of the people who are interested in NFTs, you're thinking about artists and creators. They are more often than not very, very interested in how their work is being used in a global community environmental sense. And so they want to have the lowest footprint possible, which is why proof of stake chains come into play very well. But your question had to be about where is it going to disrupt? We had intellectual property, but now let's talk about the creators. These creative people who have so much power in giving us culture. Like the idea of what culture is and where that comes from, that doesn't come from somebody coding in the back room. That comes from somebody who writes a song that captures a national sentiment. That comes from somebody who has made a painting that people look to and say, I see myself in that painting. And these people historically get that one step for remuneration, that one step for compensation. I sell it to you, that's all I get. NFTs massively revolutionize that. Because what happens is I'll sell it to you for 10 bucks, but then you'll sell it on for 100 bucks. And then that person will sell it on for 1,000 bucks. Historically, there is no way to map that chain of custody. But now with NFTs, I can build into the code 10% royalties on every subsequent sale. So I sell it to you for 10 bucks, you sell it on for 100 bucks, I get 10 of those dollars automatically coming back to me. Then he sells it on for $1,000, I get 100 of those dollars. So now, historically, that creator only got 10 bucks and had to have their entire life built on that. But now I have a revenue stream, a persistent revenue stream, ongoing, that gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more and more valuable my artwork becomes. And if that is not disruptive, I would quibble with your definition of what is disruptive.